He just needs to put in a nomination form. Have the person put in an application, then have the nominate. It's online.
It's online?
Are you on?
Started.
Okay, I'm gonna go test.
Then what? The white. Remember when Amy was telling about his form? Oh yeah. I just so there we have somebody.
Just in case,
Is he gonna do it online or is he gonna get a paper copy? He's gonna do it online.
Sorry.
Huh? I'm so dressed. This is quick. I wonder what task is. You know they expect me to drive with this boot on my foot? Huh? They expect me to drive with the boot on my foot? Drive? What do you mean? Drive my car. How'd you get here this morning? I drive. But I take my boot off. I don't drive with it on. But yeah, I can feel the bone underneath hurting me. Huh? The bone underneath my feet, I can feel it starting to hurt. So I figured if I'm still here next year, when I have to do the other one. What? Are you serious? Oh, no. I'm taking off that week. Let me know what week it is right now. Oh, that's fine because I was going to do it like in July when there are no meetings. Oh, okay. And take the whole 3 weeks off. Not worry about coming in. Hi. I did. I was looking. What is she looking for? Like, what is she saying yes about? Thank you.
I normally see you with the wig or different versus the new look for you. No wig.
I cut my hair off.
You did. A lot of girls do that.
I don't. I can't. I don't like things
You never
being
did.
on top
Okay,
of
so
my
that's
head.
what I know. It looks like it's wigs.
Yeah. No, I can't do that.
What's going on?
Thank you.
We're good.
I don't know. Did you check? Yeah.
Yeah. I remote at home and I'm able to see everything.
I'm about to start recording.
Somebody has to turn on this thing. Are you on?
Yeah, it's flashing now. Let's get this started. Let's get this over.
I know. I hope it doesn't take long. Are we going to record?
Is there pages missing? What is this?
That's what you're supposed to smile about. Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute. This can't be Deerfield.
Everyone would like to call to order the regular City Commission meeting for September 19th, 2017. Please have roll call.
Commissioner Battle. Here. Commissioner Drosky.
Here.
Commissioner Parnes.
Here.
Vice Mayor Miller.
Here.
Mayor Gantz.
Here. I'd like everyone to please stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have approval of the City Commission meeting agenda for September 19th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those, any nays? Our first item.
Okay, and the first item is an ordinance adopting the final millage rate to be adopted levied by the city of Deerfield Beach, Florida for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2017 and ending September 30th, 2018, and stating the percentage change in property taxes as such change is defined in Florida statute, section 200.065. That the millage rate hereby adopted, levied in order to produce sufficient ad valorem taxation revenue, which when combined with other projected general fund revenues will be adequate to pay the appropriations made in the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2017 and ending September 30th, 2018, shall be an operating millage rate of 6.0981, a voted debt service millage rate 0.4026, total millage rate of 6.5007. The rollback rate of 5.6003 mils is computed in accordance with section 200.065 Florida statutes. The fiscal year 2018 operating millage rate is 6.0981 mils as adopted, which represents an increase of 8.89% over the rollback rate, which shall be characterized as a percentage increase in the property tax. The voted debt service millage rate is 0.4026. A public hearing would be open.
Okay. Anyone from the public care to come up and speak on this item?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Gwen Clark Reed, 1430 Southwest Mixway, Deerfield Beach. Mayor, I'd like to know what were the changes that have been made in the budget since we had our workshops, and what were the adjusted numbers in relationship to what you're going to adopt tonight.
Okay. Thank you. We'll answer that question with you briefly. Anyone else from the public? Name and address.
Dan Hers, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue.
Thank you.
Just want to make sure that in the discussion of this budget, that make sure that it's clear that taxes are going up 9%, property taxes. And if anybody says that it is not going up 9%, then they're not telling the truth. The reason is we are collecting an additional $2.7 million in property taxes this year. That $2.7 million, if it was to be used to lower the millage rate, we would see the millage rate going down. So what are we spending this extra $2.7 million in? I don't have a lot of time to go into it, so I'm just going to give you the highlights. Insurance expense, which includes both liability claims and health insurance for the city employees, is up $1 million. And total employee salary expense increased by $2 million. I won't go into any others because time doesn't permit it. The city has collected in ad valorem taxes, and just to give you a comparison, in 2014, $31 million. Now this fiscal 18, they're budgeting $39 million. This 4 years, an extra $8 million, 25% increase. What I really liked in the presentation that we got 2 weeks ago was when we took the dollar amount that a typical citizen spends daily on their property taxes. And I think it came out to $2.03 a day. And that got compared to the cost of a hamburger, cost of a newspaper, and I can't remember what else. So I just really didn't know that we were resorting to tactics that used car salesmen use or Gerber life insurance salesmen use. The simple fact is nobody who has a homestead exemption is ever going to come up here and complain about tax increases because, quite frankly, their taxes don't go up. It is the businesses and the non-homesteaded people that bear the brunt of these increases year after year after year. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, sir. A little technical difficulty. We're wiring it up to shock people as they walk out.
I can handle it.
You're an electrician, actually, Joe. You might need to help us out here. Thank you. Sorry, sir. Name, address, city, and state, please.
My name's Joe Hines. I'm 559 Northwest 47th Terrace. I have a handout for you.
You there?
What you're looking at is some numbers I've run. I've taken it from our proposed budget. On page 8 of our budget, we show our total value of the property in the city, and we multiply it by the, which is item A. You multiply it by your millage rate, and if you got 100% of the money, you'd get to $42,791,000. That's 100%. The city uses a 95% multiplier against that number and reduces that number from 42 million to 40,652,000. That's a reduction of 2.139 million. That's on page 8. Right below those numbers, that you'll see the box that says estimated revenue for budget, the 40,652,000. But then when you go over to page 9, on the line below it, you'll see what's actually in the budget, and that's $39,018,711. That's another reduction of 1.633,481.67 in dollars. That's
What I call a second discount. Ooh, back up. So you have two discounts there. You have discount 1 and you have discount 2. When you add discount 1 and discount 2 together, you come out to $3.773 million, $3,773,070. If you take and revise your millage rate downward to 6.2396 instead of the 6.5007, which is currently being used, you end up with the same number on the budget page number 9. Now, when you take those two numbers together that are discounted, you'll see down at the bottom that I've done the math for you, and it's 8.8%. And our finance director has come up here several times and testified that the state allows you folks to use a 95% discount. This right here would be a 92% discount. So that doesn't wash.
So we've got, if you leave the 5% in there, which you've already discounted, and don't argue that point, here's another $1.6 million, and that $1.6 million needs to go back to the folks, and that would reduce your millage rate to a 6.2396. This millage rate should be reduced, in all fairness to the citizens of Deerfield Beach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public like to comment on this item? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to close the public hearing to be heard. Commission comments? Commissioner Drossky.
I don't know why I'm always first, but
New guy.
must be like a municipal hazing. I spoke with many of the residents, some of which are here tonight, before coming in, and I've received a lot of good information from them and pondered it. And I was going to come in guns blazing for a millage decrease, but then we had this thing called Hurricane Irma that hit us. And just the uncertainty with the funds that we're going to have to expend with FEMA and otherwise, I just have a bad feeling reducing the millage rate at this particular time with all the uncertainties that we have. The budget that we have is sound. We can debate, pieces of it if we want to, but as a whole, I think it covers what we need to. The one gentleman indicated, where does the increase go? Because he's correct, it is a tax increase. The millage rate, because property values have gone up, it's basically a tax increase, but the increase has gone to fire, which is 4.6% increase, police 2.1%, the tactical deployment team that the city is going to utilize here, and personnel costs. I mean, you could go down the list, but those four are probably the biggest area where the city where this increase is going. So I'm comfortable leaving it at the 6.5007. I would have liked to seen a decrease, but with the uncertainty and what we may have to expend for FEMA, and we may never get those dollars back potentially, I think the prudent course is to stay where we are with this particular budget. But I do appreciate the comments that I have gotten from the public. I've met with them many times. I've gotten the information. It did not fall on deaf ears. These are things that we can incorporate and talk about for future budgets. But for this year, I'm inclined to leave it what's proposed by the city manager.
Thank you, Commissioner Drossky. Anyone else care to comment? I'm going to go ahead and comment then. Anybody who's had an increase, as we said before, in the value of their home is going to see a tax increase. The percentage you're being taxed at is exactly the same. And if the numbers were correct, and I think some of them, I'll just assume that what the people that stood up and spoke are saying their numbers are correct, but if it's 2.7 million extra that we took in, and $1 million of it is insurance, which I don't think you could change on that. That's not something you can avoid. That's also discounting all the other things that have gone up for the cost for the city of Deerfield Beach and operate that. Also, all the things we're adding, such as the tactical deployment team for BSO, which was pointed out by Commissioner Drossky. What I don't hear is what do you want to cut? If you want to lower the millage rate, what do you want to cut? Take a look at the budget. Say, do you want to cut out some of the festivals we have? Do you want to cut back on how many police we have on the ground? Where do you want to cut? Because I think that's the kind of dialogue you need to have. It seems like everybody wants to come up and talk about, make some of these points. And again, some of these people that have gotten up and spoke, I haven't heard from, except for one, and actually that gentleman didn't even speak tonight. I haven't heard from them. So I think the dialogue needs to happen. If you want to make some changes to be constructive, tell us what you want. You can't just say lower the taxes. That's great, but show us where. Show us what you want to cut out of the services that we're delivering for you, because that's what you're going to have to do. And if you look at the storm and what we just got hit with, and we were very blessed not to be hit with a Cat 5 or a Cat 4 or even hurricane strength winds, even though I think some of the trees around here would dispute that. But we were very fortunate, and that's going to take a hit on us, and that's going to cost us a great deal of money. So I think the millage rate where it's at, we'd all love to be able to lower the millage rate. That's the whole goal. I pay taxes just like everybody else. So, but that's not something I think is prudent for us to do this year. So, and as the gentleman said, there's people that aren't coming up here to speak because their taxes aren't going up. I believe that's what the gentleman said. And that's, for the most part, pretty accurate. Need a motion. Commissioner Drosky, and then Vice Mayor Miller, and then Commissioner Battle.
I did forget one important part to my comments, is that we also have the proposed homestead exemption on the ballot for next year, which could cut into city finances. So that's another variable and unknown, which cuts, in my opinion, to leaving the millage rate the same. So that was another important factor into my decision-making that I left out in my initial comments that I wanted to add.
Thank you. That could be a potential of $1.5 to $2 million, I believe, preliminary numbers were that would cost us. Commissioner Battle?
I think Commissioner Drosky stole my show here. I'm concerned moving forward about the, the cost that we're going to have with the cost we're going to have, which will cut some more money from the city because of the extra is for senior citizens. I don't know how many senior citizens out there are going to be impacted. We don't know that one way or the other, but once it's put on the ballot, I can believe, or you can believe, that senior citizens like Gloria Battle are going to be voting for it to pass. And when that passes, that means that we're going to, again, take a big hit in terms of what we're able to get, the monies that we're able to get to run this city. I said to the city manager when I returned to town, because yes, I did evacuate, first time in in the history. I left here for a storm, but I said to him, where would we be now if we didn't have those reserves? And we need to think about that when we think about our budget and what we are assessing, not really well, and what we intend to assess tax-wise on the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone care to make a motion? And if it's all right, with all due respect to the one person that got to speak, questions regarding what was cut from the budget, rather than talk about that during the millage rate portion, does it make more sense to talk about it during the budget portion? Or would you like that answered right now?
No, I would like to talk.
Just to show of hands, either yay or nay. Thank you. Vice Mayor Miller?
Yeah, Commissioner Drosky, I was going to mention the pending reduction or increase of our homestead exemption as a viable possibility. The manager knows every year I say, let's lower it. Let's lower it. I want it lowered. But I realize, and the case has been made by my fellow commissioners, between storm expense, between the pending cut or raising of our homestead exemption, I don't think it'd be wise, and the depletion, probably $5 million or plus for this cleanup that we're doing for a storm that just didn't even hit us for all intents and purposes. It's going to cost us probably no less than $5+ million. So I think it's prudent what we have on the board here. And I'd like to make a motion to adopt the budget as a millage rate.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the millage rate as it stands. We have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Battle?
Yes.
Commissioner Drosky?
Yes?
Commissioner Parnes?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller?
Yes.
Mayor Gantz?
Yes.
Next would be an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, adopting the final budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2017 and ending September 30th, 2018, providing for effective date.
Public to be heard. Anyone from the public that care to speak on this item?
Katie Freitag, 418 Southeast 2nd Street. This is actually a question for Hugh. Mr. Dunkley?
You'll have to ask.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. In the information that was provided to us, they showed a significant decrease in the amount of permits that were processed by Giordano from last year to this year. Yet I noticed that there was a significant increase in the amount that we are paying Giordano from that last year to this year. And I wondered if I could get a little bit more of an explanation regarding those items.
Thank you. What's from the public?
Good evening. Glenn Sullivan, 2377 Deer Creek Trail, Deerfield Beach. Couple of things. On the ordinance for the budget, it basically talks about 95% of the, well, the ordinance doesn't, but Section 3 states that all delinquent taxes collected during the ensuing fiscal year as proceeds from levies of operating millages of prior years are hereby specifically appropriated for use and benefit of the general fund. I'd ask the commission to establish, or the city manager to establish, a reserve account for any collections from prior years, and those monies be earmarked for either lowering millage rates in the following years, or for capital improvements for emergencies or whatever. I don't think putting it in the general fund in an unrestricted budget is the right thing to do, especially since it was unplanned and unbudgeted funds that have come about. I'd just like to remind you that in 2016, based on the CAFR to today's budget, the delta is $23,319,000. We're spending $23 million more in 2 years. Personnel costs, if there's a place to cut, I would suggest you put a freeze on all new hires. In looking at all the background information and the information in the budget, I could not see justification for the majority of the jobs. There's at least 7 new management jobs. I don't understand why, when looking at the org charts, that we really need 7 more managers. And there are numerous position upgrades, some 4 steps, some even more. I'm not sure what the provisions are in the personnel system here, but I would assume that anything more than 1 grade jump would be advertised as a new position, and a person sitting in that position would not be automatically justified for a 4 jump or more than 1 jump in grade. Again, 7 new managers in an IT group that is spiraling. I agree, technology is important. I don't agree that we're doing this without a master plan. Again, I mentioned $47,000 for computers and peripherals, $9,000 per commissioner. I don't think that's reasonable, and that's what's budgeted. The building division did increase $600,000 from 17, but there's no performance measures to see if they are in fact going to perform better based on $600,000 more of budget. The economic development, again, metrics, their other expenses are growing.
Would you like another minute?
If I could, please. Their other expenses are growing 700%, and yet there are no performance metrics that would identify whether or not the things that they're recommending are good for the community. They did include the responsibilities that they would be doing: business attraction, retention, expansion, job creation, tax base expansion, business climate enhancement, daily business assistance, quality of life. Those are the metrics they should be tracking if they're getting 700% increase. And again, one last thing, the performance metrics that basically the whole city uses are more data points than performance metrics. I again would recommend that solid metrics be collected and shown quarterly, monthly, whatever the case may be, so that the citizen can see where their budget's spent and the return on the money they're spending.
Thank you.
Joe Hines, 559 Northwest 47th Terrace. At each budget, the manager writes a letter to the commission. On page 3 of that letter, I'd just like to make one little comment here. It says the budget recommendations continue to be built upon sound physical policy and a lean organization. The key to that paragraph there, or sentence there, is lean organization. Full-time employees in 2016 were 338. Full-time employees as it stands this year in this budget are going to be 397. That's a growth of 60 people, 59 people. I don't call that lean. If I gained that much weight, I'd be calling that fat. You show on page 10 of your budget, you show a graph, a circle graph, and it breaks down the total budget revenues of $179 million. In that, they show the percentages and so on and so forth. And if you add up all the percentages on what you can call taxes, it equals 43%. Included in that is 22% for your property taxes. It's 43%. That's on a $179 million budget, which means that 57% of that $179 million is coming from other sources. And the two other sources they list, sort of list, they don't really list the sources, they just describe them. Charges for services, $50 million, and miscellaneous, $36 million. Now I'm looking at that $36 million and thinking, boy, that's a lot of miscellaneous. That's a pile of miscellaneous. I'd be finding out what that miscellaneous is. That struck my curiosity, and I'm probably going to have to do some records requests to get to the bottom of that, and I probably end up being buried in paperwork. But what we got here, we don't have a government anymore in the city of Deerfield Beach. What we've got in Deerfield Beach is we got a business that's posing itself as a government. I mean, if you look at the CAFR, it talks about business revenues and all that sort of thing, how they allot it to government, and this budget produces you got 43% coming in from taxes, and everything else is coming out from charges that you're charging the citizens for. So you're giving them something, but what you're doing is, in the last couple of years, your personnel services have gone up 62%. Well, in order to be able to keep your budget balanced, if you got all this money coming in, you got to spend it. If you don't spend it, everybody's going to catch wind of the fact you got a lot of money left and over, and we're overcharging the customer. And I'm the customer. When the oil companies were awash in money years ago, the refineries, they ripped out all the stuff and put in brand new stuff, even the stuff they had was brand new, just so they could spend the money so their profits weren't so daggum high. And that's what's going on here. Thank you very much.
Dan Hers, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. The mayor just asked a really good question. He said, where do you want to cut the budget? Well, some of these gentlemen have just given you a perfect area. And let me make sure that this part sinks in so that everybody understands this. The only way to figure out the total salary expense of the employees in Deerfield Beach is to take every single 32 departments and add up the salary figure, because there's no other way to find out that information. So let's see what's going on the last 2 years when you do that. Salary expense the last 2 years has gone up $4.2 million. So when these gentlemen talk about that, that's the exact figure. Add up the 32 different departments and you'll get that number. Now, where else can we spend money? Insurance went up $1 million. Now, I remember we hired insurance experts in the last couple of years to lower the increase in the insurance expense. But I don't see many results from those so-called experts. All I see is 90% of employees' health insurance still being paid by the city. I see general liability claims still going up. So you want to know specifically where to cut? Why don't we start with those two areas? Now, the city doesn't listen to the will of the people. Do you know that last November there was a half-cent infrastructure tax that was soundly defeated, 62 to 38%? And why is it that there is another constitutional amendment on the ballot about increasing the homestead? because the politicians are out of control with the spending, and it's the only way to rein you all in. Now, and before I run out of time, Commissioner Drosky, at the June 21st budget workshop that I attended, you asked, and I'm going to paraphrase here, you asked every single department head how they were going to save taxpayer money in their department or how they would try to come in under budget. I hope you remember that. Almost every department head stated they would have to get back to you with an answer. So, Commissioner Drosky, did anybody ever get back to you? And if so, what did they say?
Anyone else from the public? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to close the public portion to be heard. City Manager, can you address the comments from the first item that we moved to this one from former Representative Clark Reed?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Gans. Good evening. First of all, I cut quite a bit out of the June workshops, not even at the request of Commissioner Drosky. However, I did go over it with him for a few hours, like I did with individual commissioners leading up to these budget workshops, to find out what your individual ideas were for the different districts, things of that nature, in addition to the public workshops. So what we have in this budget is a general increase for employees, which Commissioner Drosky addressed. We did keep the tactical deployment team in place. We also kept one ocean rescue lifeguard. That's a new ocean rescue lifeguard, but what we're doing is we're reducing the number of part-time to create that position without losing any positions that are filled. We are also adding, or we have the increases in the BSO contract for both law enforcement as well as fire rescue. So those are the major increases that we have. And of course, the $700,000 that's earmarked if the City Commission moves forward with issuing a revenue bond later this calendar year. As far as with employees, we have included new management employees. However, some of them are actually not in the general fund. They're actually in the utility enterprise fund, and those positions are in anticipation over the next year or two for potential retirements. We do have certain employees that have 30-plus years of service, and we certainly do not want to have those positions gone and not have anyone in there that knows what's going on. I think we can all say that during this recent storm with Irma, that we did not have any issues with our water supply. That's one of the most important aspects of what we do as a municipality, probably more important even than public safety. And we did not have to boil water. There was not a week shutdown of not having running water coming out of the faucets. So we have to look at those positions. As far as with the information technology system, while some of those employees may not manage employees directly, they do manage networks, they do manage consultants, they do manage projects. So it doesn't necessarily, the term manager doesn't always mean that you have a personnel under your cone of responsibility. And I stand by what I stated in my budget letter with lean organization. You start looking at other neighboring cities and the number of individuals that they have in financial services, in human resources, in information technology, in planning and development. And by the way, I'm just going over the departments that are in the general fund. We're lean also in our enterprise funds as well. So I think that the city is doing quite well. That's why you've been able to have 3 credit rating increases over the past 7 years. And if you all recall, back in 2010, and I know Mayor Gans and Vice Mayor Miller certainly recall that because they were sitting up here when you did have major deficits, when you did make major cuts, And we made those cuts without having a lot of impact on service delivery. However, for the city of Deerfield Beach, residents, constituents, they do want to see more parks programming. And that's where we've been putting money over the past several years into not only personnel, but also into developing new parks, smaller parks, but at least working to furnish them, to replace playground equipment, everything else. So we've been doing that with very minimal local dollars, maximizing outside dollars to help us do that. So I think the city, from a fiscal policy perspective, is quite sound. And I stand by the budget recommendation that I've brought forward, because the men and women who've worked on it have put a lot of time and effort into it. And we're not into being lean, or I mean into being fat. We are into being lean and responsive, because I do not like bureaucracy. Yet we have to work within that, as you all know, dealing with FEMA and the state over the past week or so. So if there's any more questions, I'll be happy to answer them, Mayor Gans.
Thank you. Commissioner Parnas?
We just had a storm, and I want to commend the workers of Deerfield Beach. Many who worked round the clock. Streets were cleared, roads were opened, water was available, FP&L restored lights as quickly as possible. But these people didn't quit. The city was out every day clearing roads, 24 hours a day, for your safety. Anybody who wants to cut their salary for their efforts, they'll have to come through me. When a pinch came, they produced. They didn't stay home. They didn't do a terrible job. They did a great job. That includes the police, the fire department, and all departments of this city. They kept us going. They cleaned up the best they could as quickly as they could, and life goes back to normal. I applaud their efforts. They deserve recognition for their efforts for this city, for you out there, your homes, your streets, your neighborhoods. I approve this budget.
Any other comments from the commission? Commissioner Battle, then Commissioner Drosky.
Just one quick comment, Mr. Mayor. When we were going through the budget, I remember when we were dealing with community participation, that we gotten a lot of requests, and I got some calls today wondering what happened to that. I know that I recused myself because I wasn't going to vote on it one way or the other, but I still owe my constituents a phone call back saying what happened to that particular item. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager, let's you answer that.
Yes, Commissioner Battle, we will keep money in there as allocated, and then later in October, November, when the City Commission is prepared, we'll bring that item back for the final ranking. So their money is there, and then it can be allocated as the City Commission sees fit to the different organizations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Drosky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back in June, we had probably 8 to 10 hours of budget workshops going over department by department their request for this calendar year from 17 to 18. And during that time period, it was brought up that I did ask the question about the department heads: what expenses can you save? What have you spent? What is your budget? And after those meetings, that's what the city manager alluded to, but I did have extensive meetings with the city manager and told him that the budget presentations as made at the workshops were not acceptable. And that resulted in the budget that we have today. If the recommendations that were made in June were part of this budget, it would be much higher, and we would have a definite tax increase. So based upon my comments, and it just isn't me, because I'm sure the city manager met with all my colleagues as well, but My comments were that we have to sharpen the pencil on this budget, and that's what happened. The personnel costs, I'm not the expert on it, but I know that during the recession, the city employees actually took pay decreases. And even now, what they're getting paid now doesn't, match as to what they probably should have gotten over all of these years, so it's a little bit of catch-up for them. Listen, if we want to have good talent, and we have some great talent here in the city of Deerfield Beach, I would hate to lose many of the employees that we have to deal with on a daily basis. You have to be competitive, and Deerfield Beach has neighboring cities, big and small, around us that are competitive, and we don't want to lose these folks, and we want to retain what we have here in the city of Deerfield Beach. So I'm comfortable with this budget as well. Some of the comments that I made previously regarding the homestead exemption and FEMA also apply to the budget as well as to the millage rate. But again, the comments that I received from the public were good throughout this process. But cutting now in the face of uncertainty, just to me, is not the prudent course of action.
Thank you, Commissioner Drosky. Vice Mayor Miller?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think our public safety personnel, between the police and the fire department, did an incredible job during this hurricane. And then I see something that every other district doesn't see as much, is that I don't know that I've ever seen so much sand on Ocean Way. Literally mountains.
I thought you were going to say the beach.
Well, Ocean Way became the beach. And it's been, I think we've had a record August. The heat seems to be a record September. And imagine shoveling sand in this kind of heat. And our people were there day after day doing it. Day after day doing it. I recall many times seeing statistics that show our BSO, our police, have less personnel per 1,000 than many of our neighboring cities. And they're still keeping our place in good order and as safe as possible. My personal family has used the EMS service quite a number of times. My father lived with me for a couple of years, and my wife. They do an excellent job. And I'll tell you what, you have a heart attack, you have an event where you need to call them, you appreciate the personnel and the professionalism and how they communicate with the hospital on the way there. So we have First Cabinet, and Commissioner Drosky, you mentioned neighboring cities. What our public doesn't realize is that neighboring cities is almost like neighboring businesses. And you know what? If you have a guy that's a rising star here, they're quick to go offer him a job, offer him X amount more to switch and come over to Pompano Beach. And it's happened to us. And if we want to train people, get them in the organization, we've got to be competitive. And literally, that does drive up the salary price. But you know what? It also drives up if you have turnover and over, because you lose your best people. So I come from the district that probably pays the most taxes. But I understand why. And as I was saying to Gloria, you still need whatever income your house is at. You still need fire department. You still need public service. You still need the guys picking up the garbage. You still need all of the services, regardless of the price of your home. So, city manager, I know you don't like a big bureaucracy. But I believe you want a lean and mean thing, and we came from almost having no reserves to having enough reserves to cover this, and even to cover if something else comes. And I'm willing to second if somebody made a motion to pass this budget.
Thank you. Before you do do a couple comments. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When it comes to government as a business, you can't run government as a business, because, and it's a great quote, and it's not mine, but this is a great quote, that not everything of social value is profitable, and not everything that's profitable is of social value. You cannot run things like a clean-cut business the way that works. Most of the wish list that was presented to us by the department heads during our budget hearings that we had over the summer, which again is not something that we used to have for those of you who might be new to actually showing up at these, but that's not the way it used to be. It used to be 2 budget hearings, and that was it. And so when we had that preview to what the budget was going to be, the city manager and individual commissioners and elected officials met with him and talked about it and talked about where things needed to be cut. Most of that wish list was cut. There have been a few exceptions, but for the most part it was. You think $1 million increase in health insurance with how many people we have employed for this city is an astronomical number. You're not really keeping in tune to what's going out there in the insurance industry and what insurance costs are. Used to be that everybody got everything for free. We've actually changed that up. We have multiple tiers and they actually pay a percentage. They didn't do that except for a few years ago that we started to do that. Budgets aren't operating in a vacuum. You can't look at every single individual year and if you're going to forget where you were, you're not going to know where you're going. So while I appreciate comments from people that might be new or people that weren't around, I've seen it all here in almost 10 years. I don't either. I don't understand either. I have to admit, Siri. But when you look at this, freezes and decreases, you can't say we're trying to give things away to the employees. We held a very firm and hard ground on the employees when it came to salaries. And we did that. And quite frankly, now at this point, they deserve what they're getting. We haven't gone back to the days of 9% compounded year after year, because that's what it was. That's not what we've done. We've been much more responsible when it comes to that. While it's not close to really what private industry offers when it comes to percentage increases during the year, it certainly is to what we're competing against, which is other municipalities. And I can tell you when the things were lean, the things were really tough, and we're looking at $16 million deficits, people were complaining about the services that were lacking. Take a look at the way our parks looked for years of cutting back on fertilizer budgets. And what happened when this wonderful white snow that appeared in all of our parks that everybody thought, what the heck is that? Well, it was weeds, because we cut back on fertilizer. That's the kind of things that we were making such drastic cuts not that long ago to get us to where we're at now. Cutting back on services eventually ended up paying a price down the road. We had no control over it then because the bottom fell out of the market of where we were at. But there's a reason we're trying to recorrect where we're going on and from where we were. And you have to pay your employees a competitive rate in order to keep the good ones. Because if you don't, you're gonna do nothing but keep the bad ones. So it is a competitive market, especially when it comes to municipal governments, because they will swoop in and take away your second or third tier people to put them in top, and the salaries go up, and then you're stuck. So we don't want to see that. And when you look ahead and you look at maybe your workforce and realize in the next few years you're going to need a succession plan for people coming in, rather than having to pilfer them away from other markets, which becomes competitive because you have salaries going back and forth, you bring new people in so you can raise them up and get moving forward. The whole drop program started back in the day, I believe it was in the late 60s, early 70s, when nobody was getting into municipal government to go work for it. What happened is at the end, when people started to retire, they had no new blood coming in to take over and perform those jobs. So what did they have to do? They had to pay incentives to keep the people that were ready to retire around long enough so they could fill up those positions. It's morphed into something that I don't necessarily agree with when it comes to a drop program, but this is where we're at. I think the city manager has done a good job with this budget. There are things that I still think, I know we can do better. It's certainly not perfect, and I understand that. But when these subtle attacks on the employees for what they think they're getting right now, that doesn't sit well with me. We held really firm, and it was ugly, and it was nasty, and we did pay reductions, and we did freezes for years when other municipalities weren't doing that. And we did that to get us through the hard times. And everybody then was saying, oh my gosh, what are you doing to the poor employees? And now when we're finally trying to get things back to a rather set of new normal for them, people want to go ahead and subtly attack that. And I don't think that's right. It wasn't that long ago, 4 years ago, you had someone sitting in this chair that came storming in and said, bring back everybody we fired and let's give them all back their money that they lost over the last couple years. That's what they said right from the beginning, 4 years ago. And everybody applauded and cheered that. But now suddenly those same people want to say, I don't think you should be giving it to the employees. I don't think that's right. I disagree with that. And I like the back and forth. I like the commentary. I don't like the accuse first and then ask questions later approach, which many people like to take, or just saving their comments for the podium as opposed to creating a real dialogue that might actually make a difference in the city. I think that's what we need to strive for. Those of you that are doing that, thank you. You're not being ignored. We don't necessarily agree with some of those, but that's what's going to happen. And you can't say that public input doesn't change things. Go look at the North Beach Pavilion in the CRA. That's a project that's going to be completely different than what started out based on public feedback. So minor changes to, a lot of these things that you see in the budget now are things that people were harping about 2-3 years ago, a year ago, that they wanted. That's why you see you can't do a budget in a vacuum. Municipal government, I've said it before, it's like turning a large ship. It doesn't turn on a dime, you gotta take your time to get there. A lot of the things that we're putting in the budget, the things that people are requesting, were from 3 years ago that we wanted to drive towards that and get there. So now that we're finally arriving there, people say, well, no, I want to go in this direction now. You can't really do it that way. It doesn't work. We are being responsive to what the people want. It just might not be with the certain people that want to speak up at times, but we are doing the best we can to make sure we are delivering the services that the residents want. So, that's it. City Manager, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I'll just be quick. I know you want to move on to a vote, but the other reason why we want to maintain a competitive market rate salary and classification system is, contrary to some of the rumors out there, we actually do have a very diverse management, supervisory, and workforce demographic in our city. In fact, when we recently recruited for a position, that's one of the first things the headhunter said to me was, actually, I cannot believe how diverse your workforce is in comparison to other cities, and that's on a national basis. And we absolutely use someone who has expertise and who's actually won awards for working with a minority community. In particular, they won an award from the National Public Administrators for Black and African Americans. I forget the exact acronym for it, but we have put a lot of pressure on there. And a lot of the turnover that comes from our city, because we hire qualified people and they do go through an extensive process, just not panels, but a lot more than that. When we do that, we have turnover of our minority managers that go in. For instance, our assistant director of financial services a few years ago ended up going to the city of Miami. So we try to attract minority qualified candidates, and we've done a very good job. But the only way you can do that is to keep it competitive and to keep our system the way it is and to improve upon it every few years like we did. So I just wanted to address that, Mayor Gans. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second.
Commissioner Battle?
Roll call.
Yes.
Commissioner Drosky?
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller?
Yes.
Mayor Gantz?
Yes.
Next is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach approving a budget for the Deerfield Beach Community Redevelopment Agency for fiscal year beginning October 1, 2017 and ending September 30th, 2018.
Anyone from the public care to comment on the CRA budget?
Dan Hurst, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. I just have a question, actually more of a concern with the procurement process that the CRA is using. I understand there was a recent sign that was put up on the intersection of Hillsborough and A1A, and the cost was $150,000, and quite frankly, that could have been a bargain price for that sign. However, the problem is that there was only one bid for that sign. And I did not attend the meeting where it was discussed, but just looking at the notes of that CRA meeting, it said that there was only one bid, and they put it out for bid again, and there was still only one bid. So my only question is, did staff try to understand why there was only one bid? Because obviously, if you only have one bid, how do you know whether that $150,000 was a very good price or whether the city overpaid tremendously? And the only reason I bring it up about the procurement process is because recently that has come into light because of the amount of piggyback contracts that the city is using. And I know that there are certain commissioners who are not happy with that. And also the recent bidding, rebid on the Complete Property Services of South Florida, Inc. contract that got renewed even though the commissioners were unanimously upset with the poor performance of that vendor. So I would just like for maybe a little explanation given as to why they only were able to get one bid and maybe understand a little bit more the procurement process. Thank you.
Sure. Burgess, can we have Chris Morey comment on that from the CRA? Oh, actually, we'll wait until the public portion to be heard is done. I'm sorry.
Sandra Jackson, 386 Southwest 35th Avenue.
City and state?
Deerfield Beach, Florida. Is it Colton? I guess I'm going behind Mr. Hurst. I'm a little confused with the bidding for how the sign went up because I did payroll, I did office management, I was a service representative, and even with that bid coming in, it seemed like someone would have went out and checked the price. I think that sign was kind of overpriced, and I'm a little concerned, and the money you guys are spending where you guys saying how we can save money on the budget. My concern is even when we have a football league and not picking on the Bison or anybody else.
Is that related to the CRA?
Well, it's not somewhat related to the CRA, but
Okay.
you can say somewhat. I'm just concerned with the money you're saying, how we can save money, how we put money out. Because my understanding, we're being sued, and no one's doing anything about it. Where
I think you're off base on the CRA budget right now.
well, I thought it was public also. Well, anyway, going back to CRA, I'll go back to that. I'm a little concerned because if with me, when I had my position, I had to check prices, even if someone came in to bid to see if that price was okay. Comparing the price, I think someone in the city should have compared the price and find out exactly what we was getting for the price that we paid for that sign, because I think that was overpriced. I can't believe that sign was that amount of money. Plus, I think it's the wrong place, and I think you guys need to check into that and follow up. And I'll say my other stuff at the public, when the public be heard.
Thank you, ma'am.
Glenn Sullivan, 2377 Deer Creek Trail, Deerfield Beach, Florida. I did look at a little bit of information on that sign. There were 3 actual bidders. 2 of them were disqualified. Both of them were far lower price. One of them was disqualified for not having submitted their insurance bond or something like that, and they had bid it, I think, about $115,000. So that should have been a light bulb that the 150 was a little high.
Anyone else from the public? Close the public portion to be heard regarding the CRA budget. Ms. Morey, can you talk about the process with the city manager, is that right?
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Commissioners. So this is a CRA project. The last gentleman who spoke is correct. We do follow the same procurement procedures as the city. We put the item out to bid. We got one response, and so, of course, we put it back out to bid again because we'd like to get a competitive bid to make sure that we're doing the best job we can get for the best price. And it was also correct. The second time we put it out to bid, we got 3 responses. Unfortunately, the lowest responder did not provide the required insurance information, so they had to be rejected. There was a third bidder who did not bring a certified general contractor onto their team, so they had to be also rejected. So it is actually correct that we had to award the bid to the second highest bidder. The lowest bidder was $119,000. Both of those prices do contain a $20,000 contingency budget, which we may or may not use if we need to during the construction of the project. And I think, too, things that people may not see is the fact that this sign is 100% custom made. This is not something that you can go and buy off of a shelf. Every single thing about this is custom made for this sign. So you pay, a premium for that. Not even a local company like Fast Science can do something like this. There's a structure underneath. It requires structural engineering. There's electricity involved. That requires electrical engineering. And also, because of the location of it, excuse me, we actually had to bring in a new electric transformer and bring electricity to the site. We have to bring irrigation to the site. There's just a lot of things that people, really may not see in the whole scope of the project.
Thank you. The other part of that is, I think, for people just to keep in mind with this sign. The sign was actually initially approved back in January of 2016. It wasn't a unanimous vote. As a matter of fact, Commissioner Battle and I voted against it. Commissioner Drosky, Commissioner Parnas weren't even here for when it was approved. So when the initial move forward and the approval of the design and moving forward with the actual project was done, it was well over a year ago. And yes, this year we did approve it moving forward for the actual cost of what it was, and it did go out for twice 4 bids to try to bring that in. And we can't violate the procurement process when it comes to that. You have to be able to be qualified, because if we went with the low bidder and something went wrong because we didn't follow it, we'd probably be sued, or better yet, if something were to happen with it and it would be a failure, it would cost us in liability because we didn't follow our proper procedures. So that's what it is regarding the sign. It wasn't we just decided to do it without public input. As a matter of fact, there was a great deal of public input on it. Whether or not the public came forward or not is really, that's on the public. But it certainly had multiple discussions. Multiple designs were presented on this particular project, which is different than what it's done in the past, because usually you go out for something, you say you want a sign, they give you one thing to choose from, and that's it. And that's never something that we've been happy with. So we actually had a couple different choices, and that was what was voted on. So that's what we have. Any commission comments regarding the CRA budget? Vice Mayor Miller?
I'm glad I voted for the sign. I like it. I particularly like the display, and that's going to be used for traffic as well as information about the surf and other things for wayfinding heading towards the beach. Let people know the main beach parking lot, they still have capacity, and with the garage, helping people when they get to A1A to make a left or a right. But at first I had some reservations about it, but now that I see the screen, I'm very happy that we did it, and I'm glad I was on the majority on that one.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. One other thing, we talked about being responsive to the public. One of the things that people were talking about over the past several years is gosh, when I drive from Boca to Deerfield Beach, we don't have these nice entranceways like other cities have. So we kicked it up a notch, put in something where it can inform people, and put in something that's a little more modern. And we did that. So that was in response to what people want. Now, people aren't happy with it. Some aren't, some are. So that's the way the cookie crumbles on that. Thank you. I'd like to see if
I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget for CRA.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the CRA budget. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Battle?
Yes.
Commissioner Drosky?
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller?
Yes.
Mayor Gantz?
Yes. Okay, now for our public portion to be heard, public comments. Andy, can you read that?
No comment shall be made related to the personal life or personal qualities of any person, and no language which would offend persons of ordinary sensibility shall be permitted, and no comment or discussion shall be had on items that were on the agenda.
Hi, Katie Freitag, 418 Southeast 2nd Street, Deerfield Beach. In lieu of all of the trees that have been brought down by lovely Hurricane Irma, I know that the city normally does one tree giveaway in April around Arbor Day. I'm hoping, Arbor Day, Earth Day. I'm hoping that maybe with all the trees that we've lost, that maybe the city could concede to do 2 in the next year. One for, again, Arbor Day, and then another one to help us replace all the trees that all the neighbors and the city and everybody has lost. I would appreciate it if we could take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Lee, 4311 Crystal Lake Drive, Unit 302, Deerfield Beach, Florida. A couple of months ago, there was a workshop held for the Community Redevelopment Board and the Planning and Zoning Board. Indirectly, I was ridiculed for presenting my letters of concern in person on a physical piece of paper. Now I understand the importance of sending this through email to have this on record, and I will be certain to do this in the future. Now, my concerns are the development of the Crystal Lake Golf Course. As far as I know, this is a contract purchase between Hoyer Homes and Cabot Golf, CL, as it is noted here on the Broward County property appraisers. Is this the same Cabot Golf subsidiary of the Cabot Investment Properties LLC, where Carlton Cabot, the former owner and chief executive officer, and his co-defendant, Timothy J. Kroll, who were sentenced in Manhattan federal court to 10 years in prison for $17 million securities fraud? In the application for this development proposal, I would like to direct the entire council's attention to the Broward County Commission meeting held on August 22nd. Item number 112. All letters of opposition are available on public record, and I would ask how to share this information to our city council as well. In there you will find the letters of opposition. Homeowners Association. Number 1, Homeowners Association, Linda Trotter is the president of. That consists of 75 homes. Homeowners Association number 2, Bob Freund is the president of this association, consisting of 325 homes. Now that I brought that up to attention, the developer's attorney now resorts to having the support of Homeowners Association number 3. I didn't know it existed. It is 2 buildings with 16 units. And I talked to 4 of those units, 2 of which do not want to get involved, and the other 2 oppose this. So there's a potential of 8 units who support this developer's proposal. In the application, the green space that was described, the formulation is very confusing. In the finalization, they conclude that there will be 2 remaining golf courses. That is not true. If this goes through, there will be just 1 remaining golf course. This application is not accurate. The traffic that I brought up last week in the agenda meeting, in the Planning and Zoning Board agenda.
Mr. Lee, would you like another minute?
Yes, please.
Finish your thought. Go ahead.
A traffic assessment was done to compare traffic from the old 50,000 square foot clubhouse generating 640 trips per day. 640 trips per day. Is that a sign of a golf club that is underutilized? No. I have a lot more to say, and I will be certain to get this all in emails for your public record to view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, Commissioners, Gwendolyn Clark Reed, 1430 Southwest 6th Way, Deerfield Beach. I don't know how many people spoke to the city manager or any of the commissioners about the process of getting sand for your homes during the last storm. I got on the line at 8:45. I was able to get off the line at 1:15. I think that we need to look at that process of how we bag the sand, deliver the sand, because when I got up to where the workers who were actually shoveling the sand and putting it in the bags were, it was really not very pleasant to see our workers in that manner. So I'm asking that while we are in the process of assessing Irma and other storms, that we look at possibly purchasing, and if there's a
Would
machine.
you like to complete your thought? I'm sorry. Thought it was fast. Sorry.
Yes, can I complete? Thank you very much. Yeah, I thought that was pretty fast. If we can look at purchasing a machine or a device that would do that sand, and possibly bagging sand in advance, because we know we're going to have occurrences during the hurricane period, and having sand available, that we don't have to have our employees out there, because it was over 90 degrees, and that's quite some time. And for those seniors who were there, I hope they were wearing their Depends, because sitting in a car for that long waiting to get the sand is a bit much. Also, the system that was used to go through the gate and to sign up as a resident. A person just told you they were a resident, and I did not have to produce any identification, and I thought the reason for having someone there was so that you would produce identification that you lived in the city of Deerfield and that you were a resident and you were entitled, to get the sand. So I think there were people who were turned away, who, knowing that if they got through the gate and they didn't have to produce any identification, the person that came along and asked, "Are you a resident?" and you just said, "Yes, you were a resident," and then you got inside and you didn't have to show that you were, they could have stayed in the line, and we could have serviced, probably been servicing any and everybody. So I think that whole system of how that was handled needs to be looked at. And the city manager, I spoke to you previously, and I said there were some other things that happened during this hurricane that we need to look at. So I'd like to know if there's going to be a wind-down meeting, and I'd like to be invited to that meeting if possible, if the public could participate on some of the issues that others may have experienced during this period of time, and that we be able to better service our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandra Jackson, 386 Southwest 35th Avenue, Deerfield Beach. I apologize because I thought it was a public hearing before. Okay. I want to applaud the employees also for doing a good job, and I think you guys spoke about them saying it's about time to get a raise. I think when Mayor Robb was up there, she was fighting for them, and it's funny all of a sudden now everybody's conceded what the workers have been doing. As you know, the craft employees have not got a raise for years, and management that came in here got a lot of money or got paid high bucks. So I do want to applaud the employees, and I do hope you guys treat the employees fair. I think they are doing a good job. My question is, now with the trash pickup, I'm hearing a lot of rumors. That's why I'm coming here. I'm not sure how it's true. I hear you guys started on the beach. Now you guys are going to District 1. After District 1, we're skipping over District 2, going to 3, and then 4. Because what I'm hearing is saying that there's not many residents in District 2. So I hope you guys be fair to District 2, although I don't live there, I do have property there, and we need to get together and be as one. Thank you.
James Benefield, 533 Northwest 3rd Way, Deerfield Beach, Florida. We're talking about a raise for the employees. Yes, give them a raise. I am a 31-year Teamsters, 10 of those 31 years as a union delegate. And this thing about raises, it should be across the board raise. Don't give Jack 10 cents more than Joe, because the only thing you can do, make Jack be a snitch, is going to cause problem. In the Teamsters, we didn't do that. If we got a 4% raise, everybody got a 4% raise. There's no incentive in being snitches. There's no incentive. No, man, that's wrong. I keep saying, this city has to come together. There shouldn't be any big I's and little U's. With the trash pickup. Just because God, you got me messed up. Just because a section pays more tax, do they deserve more service? Huh? You shouldn't use that. None of you. Well, we pay more tax. You shouldn't use that. Tax is a tax is a tax. You know? And about the trees. If you give trees out, yes, give them out. By all means. Don't let the neighbors plant these trees on the light line. We are our own enemies as far as the lights being out. You plant these trees on the light line, you won't let Florida Power light, or nobody cut them. Then you got the people in the city, don't top the trees out. God topped them out, who's going to charge now? I know more about my trees than any of you know. If they grow too tall, I can't get my fruits. You know, it's stupid to set up and say, well, they say the arbor so you can't do this. No. Before you can walk in somebody's shoes and see how tight they are, you got to live in that group. Now, you don't give out trees, but they're going to plant them under the light wire. If you got good fruit, you're going to say, don't. We don't want you to cut it. We got a lot of fruit. We don't want you to cut our trees. Then the next hurricane comes, which is coming. It's coming. You can pray and this and that, but God got his eyes on the city of Deerfield. Believe it or not, we escaped the first one. That's just a warning. There's a song say, let this be a lesson. No, I ain't gonna say it today. But you better listen.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak?
I can sing though.
Glenn Sullivan, 2377 Deer Creek Trail, Deerfield Beach. So we'll keep talking about the raises and everything. I don't think anyone who spoke to this commission tonight was against the 2.5 COLA contractual raise that the employees are receiving. So if you thought that, you misunderstood everybody who came up here. I have a problem with the amount of new employees that are being hired. And
the budget portions it's something that we've already talked about on the agenda, so you're going to have to talk about something that's not on the agenda already.
Okay, so raises. That was talked about on the agenda, and you let 2 other people talk about it. So one of the questions I had was when people...
I'll let you finish your thought then. You made a good point.
Thank you. So the point is, no one talked about not giving employees raises. They're well-deserved. The COLAs were negotiated contractually. So if you thought, I can speak for myself, I had no problem with that. It's, again, the new positions, the management positions that are being added. When you look at the organization, and I compared 17 organization to 18 organization. I didn't just look at an organization and say, why are they adding? It just didn't make sense in a lot of cases. And when you look at the grade creep, again, I would like to know at what point do those jobs have to be advertised? Is it 1 grade, 2 grades, 3 grades, 4 grades? Can a current sitting employee?
You're moving well beyond, if you can stick to, if you want to talk about raises, fine.
Okay, this is my second question that's on grade creep. When do those jobs have to be announced and publicly competed?
Hi, Mayor, Commissioners. I can say two subjects, right? In 3 minutes, okay?
You got 3 minutes, as long as it's not something that's on the agenda.
My name's Terry Rasmussen, 3837 Northwest First Drive, Deerfield Beach, Florida, 33442. First of all, I work for a large corporation in Boca, and we've had 2 people transfer down here in the last 6 months, and they were told the 2 upcoming cities to move to were 1, Deerfield Beach, 2, Delray Beach. So I attribute that to you all sitting here, and I applaud you for that. They didn't say Miami, they didn't say Fort Lauderdale, they didn't say West Palm. It was your city and Delray, and I think that's 2 great comparisons and 2 great cities. I think we have the best commission I've seen here in 23 years since I've lived here. So I thank you all for running, because I know it's a tough job. But another reason I'm here, I want to bring to your attention of something that's happened in our neighborhood of great concern to the neighbors the residents in Gateshead, Hillsborough. And I'm here to represent John Stevenson, he's on the board, as I'm on the board, to tell you of our issues that's going on there at this time. I'm here to tell you about our concerns with the alleged kidnapping that happened on August 23rd, 2017, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on First Place. This is a school district area. We have moms walking back and forth with their kids at this time. We're asking for answers or any kind of news on any kind of investigation. This was an assault and battery. You saw her bruises. Is it a kidnapping? Is it alleged? If it's a kidnapping, we have a lot of alarmed people in the neighborhood. And I'm coming to you guys to ask you if you give us any answers of how it's progressing and what is going on. I feel, in my opinion, it's connected to a, I'm calling it an address, what I call it, I wrote it down. We have a home that has many issues on it, on the same street. I don't want to give you that address. I'm in fear of what might happen to me if it's on record of the address. The alleged kidnapping, there was neighbors with cameras that showed a car leaving from this house that we've had trouble with for the last 8 months. And if you look it up, I don't have to tell you the address. You know it, and probably the sheriff knows it. We have called the police many, many times on the goings-on in this house. The car of the alleged kidnapping was seen leaving that house around 3 o'clock. And that was reported, and the police picked up the camera on that. We've not heard anything from that. Was it the car? We think it kind of was, or we think it's related, because of going on at this house. That's not too far from the alleged kidnapping. So I don't have any answers. The residents are wanting to know what's going on. If you could help us, tell us anything that we don't feel dangerous to walk on our streets in a typical normal neighborhood. It's a residential neighborhood. It's a normal neighborhood. You live there. You live there. I'm shocked that it's going on, and I'm shocked that we're not getting any answers from anybody as to the progress of the investigation. Real quick, one more minute.
I'll give you one more minute.
What I do know is, after the alleged kidnapping, on that, it was like, I think on a Wednesday, Thursday night, there was a car in that driveway. We're very close to neighborhood, and we were all watching football at a house. And there's a car that parked across the street, and we could see it, knocked on the door. It was not a normal person that was in this neighborhood. We thought he had a gun, and he knocked on the door, and he had the wrong house. The house he was looking for is the home in question. He walked down to the home in question, parked there for about an hour and a half. We got a license plate number. We called the police. They showed up an hour and a half later. We told them it was at this house. We told them that we thought he had a gun, and someone showed up about an hour and a half later, and that car was gone. We, again, feel this is all connected. Saturday night, there was another car in the driveway. We were outside again. We called the police, the neighborhood called the police, and they said this house had 3 warrants, or 2 warrants.
Thank you, Ms. Rand.
That's it? All right, anyway, I appreciate if you could help us at all. Anything going on in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here.
Name and address for the record.
Joe Hodge, 3962 Northwest First Drive, Deerfield Beach.
Thank you.
The great city of Deerfield Beach. Thank you. I'm here also to speak with Terry Rasmussen in regards to the goings-on in the neighborhood that we have, and you guys may or may not be aware, it was an attempted kidnapping that was actually an assault and battery on a young woman. I'm the father of 3 teenage daughters that walk to the school bus stop there, so I also have great concern. We have some other mothers who, one that has the flu, she couldn't be here tonight. She will not walk her children to school anymore because people from that house have harassed her, catcalling her and saying things to her. She won't walk to school anymore, which it's a great neighborhood. You know, we have a lot of great neighbors. We have a lot of great, goings on in the neighborhood, but this one particular house has a group of people living there that are causing a lot of trouble. One of the things that I know for sure, I saw a car pull up to the house late in the evening. Somebody got out of the car. They drove up with no lights on.
They got out of their car, they knocked on the window. You know, suspicious enough. Well, as they drove away, there happened to be a sheriff there, Officer Seating was there, and he pulled them over. And he came back and he told me that of the 5 occupants in the car, 2 of them listed that as their address, and all 5 of them had lengthy criminal records, including burglaries. Since they've lived in that house, the 2 houses directly adjacent to them, behind them, have been broken into. One of the houses that was broken into is a brand-new neighbor. They work for the city of Boca Raton. They were in the emergency management group that was bunkered for the storm, you know, to help the city. And the husband was moved out of town. He works for a hospital, and they had to do their logistics from out of town. So they had to leave town, and they were broken into. As they shuttered up their house and got ready to leave, they were broken into. They are directly across the fence behind this house in question, where, as Terry said, the car who did this attempted abduction was observed in the driveway the day that it happened, and in the driveway again the next day. So it seems pretty apparent that they have some connection to the house, and it seems pretty apparent that there's bad news in that house. So we would appreciate anything that you guys can do to help us. Thank you.
Welcome to the party. Joseph Missick, 4052 Northwest First Place, Deerfield Beach, Florida. Well, Terry and Joe both told you guys what's going on our street. He lives catty-corner to it. I live basically across the street. I have 2 small children, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. The cars that come and go, maybe 50 cars a day sometimes, none of them regard any speed zones, none of them have any regard for any of the people that live there. The one car in question was the person pulled directly in front of my house, walked up to another neighbor's house, knocked on the door, no one's there, walked to another neighbor's house, they got him on video, said, "What do you need here?" Then he realized, oh, let me see, no, it's this house, did his business and left. Cars come and go with no lights on. You know, the kids are still out at night. It's still fairly warm out. They're still playing. I would also like to know if there's another way we can get another speed bump on my street. We have 2. One's further down, and then the other one's even further down. I know in the back of the neighborhood in Starlight Cove, they put more aggressive speed humps. I know I'd like to push for that, if not in front of my house or a couple feet down the road. I'd be all about that. But we need to get something done because it's getting out of control. And a lot of the, like he was saying about the mothers, they're getting yelled at, and people just don't feel safe, and it is a very safe neighborhood. So if we can maybe expedite that, that'd be great, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Dan Hurst, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. Before I get to what I really wanted to talk about, I just want to clear up a couple things that I've heard recently. For the commissioner who had mentioned that there are citizens who are proposing that salaries be cut, just want that commissioner to know that if he checks the video, he'll find out that nobody mentioned anything having to do with cutting salaries. And if you look at the video and you find somebody who mentioned something about cutting salaries, let me know and I'll take them out to the parking lot. Okay, another misconception I just want to get cleared up. Another commissioner mentioned that this hurricane cleanup is going to cost $5 million. I would like to know where that number came from. Also, I just want to remind everyone that in the budget, we have over $5 million that is clearly earmarked to be used for nothing other than hurricane cleanup. And also to the commissioner who was worried about the salary cuts that happened in 2012 for the employees, I'd just like to remind that commissioner that in last year's budget, that money was given back to every single employee who had a cut in 2012. Now for what I really wanted to talk about. At the last meeting, having to do with the bond, the citizens finally got to discover something that the commissioner and commissioners and city manager knew all along, that the bond was $39 million instead of $37 million. We also then were told why that $2 million difference, having to do with interest reserves. Now, Commissioner Drosky, you were on the right step when you asked Sylvia, what about bond insurance? But I'd also like to take it a step further. Please have Sylvia give you the pricing if no insurance is bought, what would be the pricing on that bond then? And let me explain to you why. Many years ago, I was a vice president for commercial lending with Bank of America, and I know a little bit about debt service coverage and interest reserves. Now, normally on a loan, the bank requires you to have what's called a debt service coverage of 1.3 to 1. To try to make this as simple as possible, if you're going to borrow $10, the bank wants to make sure that you have $13 in income coming in to pay that principal and interest payment of $10. Now let's look at what the city has. The city has $26 million in reserve. Now, about 15 million of that is earmarked for specific items that cannot be used to pay that $2 million a year. But that leaves about $11 million left over. So the city has a debt service coverage of 5.5 to 1. May I have an extra minute, Mayor?
Are you wrapping up your point?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So the city has a 5.5 to 1 debt service coverage ratio. So Commissioners, I beg you to please make sure that when Sylvia comes back here, you also get a quote without insurance, because from my background in banking, you all have a very healthy reserve to make those payments. And I'd hate to have to see the city pay an extra $80,000 a year in interest and over $1 million over the course of the bond for something that they may not need. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public care to speak? I'd like to close the public portion to be heard. Just to address a couple things really quick, I did reach out to Mr. Stevenson and looking forward to having a meeting with the public over there. I haven't even, I think we're just going back and forth on dates yet. I need to check with the city manager and the chief of police to go over that. Do we have any comments that we can hear from the chief of police regarding this?
Yes, we spoke earlier, so he can speak to it, but I will have to preface that this is a criminal investigation, so he's not going to be able to share any details. But I think he can at least calm some nerves. So, Chief Schnackenberg, thank you.
Good evening. We are investigating the complaints. We've run down several leads. It's still an ongoing investigation, so we can't discuss much. But I will caution everybody that even though there was an incident in the residence, at that residence, we believe it's an isolated incident and the facts of the case aren't exactly everything that they appear to be. So we are investigating it. We have several leads. We've been with the victim on numerous occasions, and we are still working leads. So we're aware of the house. And again, I don't want to discuss what we've done because that can compromise the investigation, but just know that we've been out there several times.
Thank you.
Any questions? No?
City manager comments?
Well, I was just going to ask if Mr. Tom Good could come up to discuss the sandbag distribution.
Sure.
Because it's much like the gas stations and other lines. I mean, the lines were long, but we were still able to get the job done. So I do want to commend the staff and volunteers that were there. Thank you.
Wonderful. Good evening, Mayor, Commission. Thank you at least for allowing me the opportunity to speak a little moment about the sandbag operations. One of the things that I will tell you is that there were very, very few cities in Broward County that were actually providing sandbags for folks to use to protect their properties. We had a lot of confusion and communication. There were a lot of folks from all over Broward County that did come to our location, and they wanted to get sandbags. Our operations were run pretty good, and I'm sorry that Honorable Gwen Clark-Reed had experienced what she did, and I'm only wondering, did somebody know you when you approached them, and maybe they didn't ask for your ID?
Rather than discuss back and forth.
I'm sorry, I apologize. But because we were very diligent. Matter of fact, we took names on, that's how we kept track. Anybody that came in, we asked them for verification that they were city residents. We took their names. We have that list of names with us. We had people that were front-running the entire line, telling people that if you are not a resident of Deerfield Beach, you are not going to get any sandbags, and they were told to move on along, and they didn't like some of that, but it was very aggressive. But the staff did a very, very spectacular job in managing the amount of need that we had received from the city. And I got to say that the police department really came through. We had, they came out in full force. We had a line that went that wrapped around our building, went out down to Goolsby, down to Military Trail, all the way down to 10th Street, 2 days in a row. And we did work very hard to get in advance, beginning of the day, sandbags in advance, to try to start handling some of the volume of folks that we got. And then we were blessed with having volunteers from the Parks and Recreation Department, Social Services. It was just incredible. People were just coming all over the place to help fill out the bags. Ocean Rescue was out there even. I mean, we have videos, we have pictures that show that this was a tremendous operation within the city. We served probably over, I'd say we had about nearly 9,000 bags that we gave out. I mean, we just kept running out, getting bags, getting sand until there was no more to be gotten from anywhere. And so we were given 10 bags per person. So we were close to 800-900 people that we actually got to serve. We do recognize, though, that this operation could be better. We've already identified some better tools, better devices that would allow us to make these things quicker. And so I want to tell you, though, that this city was represented extremely well, and we served a whole lot of people, and there were a lot of people that were very thankful for what they got from this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or any other comments that you wanted to counter or
Well, no.
answer?
We can move on to the administrative comments if you'd like.
Sure, let's go and do that.
Okay, if I could, I'd like to bring Mr. Gressick down, if he's still here, Chad. And, before we get into that, I would like to commend all the staff, certainly the workforce. What a lot of people don't realize is that we had many of just not the general workforce, but even senior management, starting basically the day after the last city commission meeting, moving forward and on this storm, including through the weekend. We had staff at 3 facilities hunkered down that worked, and we've had them working ever since the hurricane. So we've had vehicles out since Sunday night when Chief and I went out to start taking a look and assessing the damage that was hit later that night. And, Mr. Gressick's crew, Mr. Miller's crew with Parks and Recreation, certainly Mr. Good's crew with Environmental Services, they all did a tremendous job. Some others, I know we talk a lot about fire and police, but some others that need to be commended are Donna DeFranzo and her group. They also did a tremendous job reaching out to nursing homes and to individuals with disabilities or with special needs, transporting people, answering the phones, things like that. And Ms. Petty and Vicki Placid-Picard from Community Development were taking water to seniors that couldn't necessarily go to the points of distribution at Quiet Waters and to Praxis. And I know certainly I'll let Mayor Gans talk about some of his dealings with the Palms and what they did over there. But I think staff just didn't do a great job. They did an absolutely spectacular job all the way from the parks, Ocean Rescue, to fire rescue and management. So I commend all of them because they were dedicated. A lot of them left their families at home during the event, and that's very stressful. The reason why I asked Chad to come up here is to give you the real scope of what type of damage the city has sustained. We, Vice Mayor Miller, got that $5 million from an estimate that staff, along with our consultant who does debris monitoring, just not for us, but for cities around the country, came up with just from going out and assessing what we did. Since Sunday night, we were able to open roads up so they could get around. For instance, Tom Good and Chad's group were out Sunday night cutting trees so that fire and police could get around the city. West Hillsborough Boulevard and South Military Trail were completely blocked. You cannot drive a vehicle down there. Many neighborhoods were also blocked, particularly in District 2. We had a lot of neighborhoods that were down to just 3/4 of a lane where the rest of it was blocked or they were completely blocked. We had all the major roadways and most of the roadways open by Monday evening and certainly by Tuesday evening. And then we started on Thursday with regular bulk pickup, regular trash pickup. We don't have regular trash pickup anywhere in the city on Wednesday. And on Friday, they started with storm debris pickup. So Chad, if you will talk about more of the detail about the actual storm debris, but
Sure.
also why we're hitting the areas we're hitting.
Yep.
And the reason why, because it is not true. We will hit every city, every public right-of-way, and eventually, once we get approval from FEMA, even some of the private and gated roadways.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Manager, for that explanation. And, I want to echo that comment that our staff has sacrificed and continue to sacrifice to try to get this city back to normal, or as normal as we can do it, within an efficient manner as we can. There's a really good article out at Sun Sentinel tonight which kind of explains the challenges that we're facing, all of South Florida is facing because of the magnitude of this storm. Although the winds weren't as strong, there were isolated tornadoes that did a lot of damage, and if you don't believe me, just go out to District 4 on the west side of the city. But essentially, because of what happened in Texas, a lot of resources were directed there. A lot of attention was directed to Texas. And then this storm, because it affected such a large part of the state, all of South Florida, the Keys, the west coast of Florida, into Gainesville, into Jacksonville, the resources are spread extremely thin right now. We are actually in a much better position in a lot of cities because we have city crews. And those city crews are out there sacrificing and working around the clock to get as much of this debris up as possible. To address the city manager's comment, there's a variety of reasons why we're hitting certain areas in the city right now. Number one, we're focusing on public right-of-ways because that's the area where we can almost, I can't say guarantee FEMA assistance, but there's a lot greater chance when you're removing debris on public roads. FEMA has not come out with a official guidance yet on private communities, so there's a chance that if we go in there, that may not be reimbursable. And of course, if we do everything right, there's still a chance that we may not get reimbursed either because the bank account is pretty low right now because of all these other issues throughout the country. So it's a very difficult conundrum that we're faced with. We're trying to get everybody back up as soon as possible, but we want to make sure we're going to get as much money back. So we ask that the public be patient. The other challenge that I alluded to is that the resources are spread thin. So the contractors that we have in place prior to the storm are getting pulled to other areas for greater amounts of money. So, that's another challenge that we face in the next couple days to determine how we're going to address that issue and bring in contractors that can pick up some of this debris that our trucks can't. Our trucks can't pick up some of this material, plain and simple. We can't. And the impact that this storm has had on our equipment is significant. And the longer that we drive this equipment and push it to its limit, as well as our employees, the closer we get to a potential breaking point. So, again, I just want to stress, please look at the article on Sun Sentinel. It's very, very well done. It talks about all the challenges. It basically indicates that, the hurricane debris is going to be out there, unfortunately, a lot longer than some people expect. Hopefully that won't be the case here in Deerfield Beach, but again, we just want to let everybody understand this is a big, big problem that not just Deerfield Beach is facing, but all of South Florida.
Yep, and it's actually beyond just South Florida. I mean, today when we were discussing it with our consultant that does actual debris collection in addition to our staff, Volusia County has 1.5 million cubic yards of storm debris. Jacksonville, 6 counties in Georgia, Charleston County, South Carolina, and of course you have Collier County on the west coast and what's happening down in Monroe and Miami-Dade. But just to give you perspective, the 98,000 cubic yards is only residential. That doesn't include any of the trees that are down on medians, doesn't include trees that are down in parks or city properties, and we also do not pick up on business or industrial commercial properties. That's just strictly residential, which I believe equates to what, a year and a half of?
Yeah, if we were to use our typical collection tonnages and rates, if we were to calculate that out over the volume that's out there, we're looking at about a year and a half of restoration if we're just using city crews. Again, we're hoping to get some contractors in here to help, but that's essentially the amount of material that's out there right now. It's a significant amount. And just, again, as another example, over 2 days we collected a week's worth of what we typically collect. So, again, please, if we understand that you want the material removed. There's a storm out there. We understand that, individuals want that material off the road. We do too. But there's just a certain amount that we can do ourselves. And again, we're trying to bring in help, but we're fighting with everybody else in the state to try to get those resources here.
I think if I could just, I'm sorry, I wanted to ask
Commissioner
you
Bell.
a question.
Yes, you alluded to trash pickup as it relates to the various neighborhoods, but I want you to, for the benefit of those people, especially those people in District 2, to tell us how the trash pickup is being handled one way or the other. And a part of this, and the reason why I'm asking you to do this, because this is not the first time that I've heard one of the residents in Deerfield, in District 2, say that we've diverted all of the pickup people over to the beach or whatever, and we've left District 2 out. And from what they say to me, Burgess, is coming from some of our own staff. And I need the people to understand, or the people in, especially those people in District 2, how the pickup is being handled for the city in the various neighborhood districts.
And again, we're trying to do the best we can with what we have. All things considered, District 2 fared pretty well compared to the rest of the city. So that's one of the main reasons why we've focused in the other areas that have more debris, plain and simple.
How many trucks do we currently have out?
We have,
Just on
we have 9 boom trucks, and then we have roll-off trucks that help supplement that. We also have a dumpster, a flatbed truck so we have all the resources that we have available directed at this effort right now.
And I believe in addition to that, what the consultant, debris consultant is recommending, that it actually be over 30 trucks, and that would still take 30 to 60 days to clear material out of the entire city. So what we're doing isn't even scratching the surface. But we are certainly going to hit every roadway. What we're trying to do is get major debris where we can, and then go from there. It's prioritization.
Yep.
So if District 2 would have been hit with major damage, we would be in there first. But I can tell you, if you drive around District 4, they got hit, just as bad as District 1, and in some cases, some of the communities which we haven't even picked up in yet, like Deer Creek, have been hit probably the hardest in the entire city.
Yep.
Thanks, Chad.
Yep.
If if I could just have one more
Sure.
minute. The other person I'd like to bring up here, because he just did a phenomenal job, and wanted to save it for last and let him talk a little bit, is David Santucci. He's actually over emergency management for the city, and I can tell you for probably 22, 23 hours a day, he was rocking and rolling, because there's a lot that goes behind just not debris, but dealing with the county, dealing with the state, and certainly working with Fire Chief Sievers and with Captain Schnackenberg. So Dave, you want to talk a little bit about power and some of the other things that you did?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, City Commission. David Santucci, Assistant City Manager. When it came to the power with FP&L, the biggest issue, as even one of our residents discussed, the biggest issue were the trees. The power infrastructure did very, very well throughout the storm, but the trees were the biggest issue. Good news is the trees that caused a lot of the lines to go down are now down, and the lines are still back up. The FP&L, they concentrated first on their critical infrastructure, and they had a specific list of critical infrastructure that consisted of hospitals, public safety, and things like water plants. And then from there, they had a list of assisted living facilities as qualified by the state that they hit up. And then from there, they started schools, and then they started restoring power throughout the rest of the communities. They stuck to the plan fairly well, and I think that there is certainly room for improvement. I will be bringing those remarks and comments to them at a future meeting that I expect we will have with the county. So as far as the power is concerned, they really did stick to what they had promised pretty much. I think they were shy of about 130 residents by Sunday, where their promise was to restore power to all residents by Sunday evening. So very close to the mark. The emergency management event was much more than a drill this time, as we had experienced with Matthew last year. Luckily, last year it was more preparation, and we didn't get hit, so that was great. But this time, this was the real thing. And fortunately enough, we were very lucky to only receive the disaster and devastation and the inconvenience, quite frankly, that we received in comparison to what the West Coast is going through. If you see aerial photography of what they are experiencing, they still have major flooding and power outages. They have approximately 130 generators deployed throughout the county just to keep their lift stations running so that they can keep some sort of water quality. So we fared pretty well. During the storm, as Burgess mentioned, we were in the EOC. We were at Environmental Services. We were at Central City Campus. We deployed crews immediately. I guess it would be early Monday morning, even before the sun came up. BSO law enforcement was out there doing a rapid impact assessment. We were one of the first ones to be done. And after we got that rapid impact assessment done, which basically does very rudimentary calculations of the wind damage and the flooding damage throughout the city, we had a fairly good idea of what we were facing. And yes, that amounted to a lot of power outages, which led us to a remarkable outreach campaign that was handled by Donna DeFranzo, Vicky Placid-Picard, and many others to reach out to our assisted living facilities, our elderly communities, our lower income elderly communities, the high rises, the apartments, and so on and so forth. Those were very difficult at times, considering that there were power outages, there were elevators that were out, and the resources. You have to understand that even when people need ice, food, and water, those resources typically don't come for 3 to 5 days. This is why you always, always, always hear the county preaching. You must be prepared to live on your own with a supply of resources for approximately 3 to 5 days. And that's exactly what we experienced. We did not see resources coming in for about 3 to 5 days, although we did what we could in terms of finding those resources and getting water and food and ice and the like, and we did when we could. The rapid impact assessment after that revealed obviously a major debris event. I won't talk any more about that, as Chad has talked about that in great detail. And at Burgess, it was, about a week and a half of blur, so if I'm missing anything, that you want me to speak of?
I think we covered it.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Dave's been working on a diet of Red Bull and Cheetos for the last week and a half, so please forgive him. Any other comments? Okay. Commissioner Battle, do you have another comment?
No,
Okay.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, I'll start with you.
It's been said, but public safety, all the departments in the city, I'm very proud of them all. And thank you for making this tough event bearable. Thank you very much, the whole tribe, everybody associated. And thank you for the management team.
Thank you. Commissioner Bowell?
Yes, am I on now? Yes. I want to echo everybody's sentiments. Certainly, we had a great staff. Thank you, staff. And I must give a great applause to my mayor. We had a situation at one of our centers. It was a private center, and if you've never seen him in action, I saw him in action on that particular night. I called him. I was over at the center, and the people, for whatever reason, didn't have lights and were going bananas over there. And I called the mayor, and in true form, he showed up and he showed out on behalf of the residents there. And I really want to thank you. I've been back over there, and they're still talking about the mayor. I hope they don't forget me during election time. They're still talking about the mayor. But all in all, I did leave here because I evacuated, but I kept in contact. Staff was in contact with me and gave me the A-OK when to come back. I arrived back and I found that, everything was being taken care of, and I'm really, really pleased with that. But I have to say that I really cheated because I watched my fence blow down and everything that happened to my house on my security camera, so my light stayed on, and I'm thankful for that. Dave, thank FP&L for that for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Parnas?
Again, I want to thank staff for an outstanding job. We live in a great city with a great staff, people who are dedicated to your safety. I want to thank Chief Snackenberg, our fire chief, emergency services who risk their lives to keep you safe. It's unusual that they call us the tribe, but in reality, we're family. And I feel a great pleasure in serving with people and employees who put us first and their own family second to secure this city. They deserve our thanks.
Commissioner Drosky?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, just the administrative piece. October 7th will be my next Saturday office hours from 10 to noon here at City Hall. Call me or call staff. They'd be happy to set up an appointment with you. But I want to jump on the bandwagon as well about the hurricane. There's going to be some really nice residents helping residents stories that are going to come out of all of this once the dust settles. And some of those people in our room here tonight, and some aren't. And I just wrote a couple down, and I'll mention them at future meetings or whatever. But in Deer Run, Dean Callan was out helping neighbors, cutting trees and clearing roadways. In Starlight Cove, Joe Catroni was helping before the storm clear vacant lots for foreclosure homes and taking in things that wasn't even his house or his property, but clearing it before the storm. Glenn Sullivan from Deer Creek actually notified me today of some residences in Deer Creek that still didn't have power that I didn't know about, and that he called, and power was restored by the end of the day to them. And as Commissioner Battle alluded to, the mayor, Bill Gans, on his own dime and on his own time at this, what we're calling center, really helped those residents in a time of need. So there's going to be some great heartwarming stories that are going to come out of this, and those are only a couple that I want to mention. So those are the residents, but as far as the city goes, the captain of our ship through all this, and who really deserves the lion's share of credit, is our city manager, Burgess Hanson. He had a plan, he knew what he was doing, he had direction for staff, and the staff followed that direction. All the credit goes to our city manager. He likes to deflect credit, but this is a situation where he needs to accept it, because he did a phenomenal job. Our employees, I had the opportunity to go to the EOC before the hurricane. These employees, it was alluded to, but you have to understand, the hurricane was, the majority of it was on Saturday and Sunday. They were there, maybe starting Wednesday and Thursday, and stayed there through the storm until Monday, Tuesday of the following week. So 5-6 days, our city staff stayed there away from their own families to be here and to help our city. They were basically locked down in this facility 24 hours a day with each other. And how they're still alive, I don't know. But
We lost a few.
but they did a fantastic job. So I hate to keep saying staff, because that seems so generic and so impersonal. So I'm going to read off some names that I saw at the EOC there. And if your name isn't mentioned, I truly apologize, because I hate doing this for fear of missing somebody. But if I call you and you have somebody that works for you and I don't mention them, please mention, for me, because they really, truly deserve a lot of credit for what you guys did, hold up in that center for so long. You were dealing with the state, you were dealing with the county, you were dealing with other municipalities, you were dealing interdepartmental. And as mentioned, as soon as the winds were safe for them to go back out, they were on the roads. The roads were impassable. The first thing was the push to clear the roads in the city, which most of us probably never even saw, that they got that done right away. Then the reaction to the storm, and now we're in the recovery to the storm. It is a monumental process that the layperson will never understand, and I just caught a small sliver and glimpse of it. But Cara Petty, David Santucci, Rebecca Medina, Amanda Robin, Charlie DeBrusco, Captain Schnackenberg, Tom Good, Dave Hunt, Nicole Giordano, Stephen Graham, Chad Gressick, Dave Eberline, Chris Morley, Hugh Dunkley, Donna DeFranzo, David Miller, and Rusty Sievers are the names that I wrote down. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And for those that I missed, please do not take any offense. There were many other people there. These are the ones that I just remember and wrote down. But they did a fantastic job for our city. We are miles ahead of other cities in responding to this storm. And again, thank you very much, Burgess, for leading this team. I'm glad to be a part of it.
I hear you did a pretty good job. In the truth of the matter, it was an absolutely amazing effort by this entire team. And certainly from the top, Burgess Hanson on down, it was an incredible effort. I do want to thank my colleagues also for keeping their heads cool and looking at the big picture and not focusing on some of the small issues. It is amazing when people are thinking, well, gosh, how come they didn't pick up trash on Tuesday, the day after really the storm had kind of calmed down? But I will say this. I want to thank the citizens, too, because it was an incredible effort out there. In all of South Florida, I'm amazed. I'm a Florida native, and we're not known for our hospitality at times. But I saw some incredible acts of kindness out there. A few jerks. For the most part, I'd say 95% of the stuff that I experienced was an incredible effort by all South Floridians. And I want to thank all my Broward County mayors. The communication efforts and the way we kind of came together to keep each other in the loop and actually work together, which is not something you often see in competing cities. Really outstanding jobs. Mayor Jack Seiler, Dan Sturmer, Mike Ryan, and on and on and on. Broward County mayors, I appreciate you and everything you did as far as cooperation and including us in your efforts. I do want to thank the governor, because actually Governor Scott did an outstanding job. We had all the mayors of the entire state of Florida had a conference call with the governor each day leading up to the storm, keeping us informed, taking notes, and following up, which is something you rarely see at the state level, and I thought they did an outstanding job. On a county level, Chip LaMarca, Mark Bogan, outstanding job, really came through for some of our residents that really needed it. When we needed the pod here, we originally arranged for a pod to come here, then we were told Quiet Waters was going to be a pod for ice and water, and then they decided to divert everything to the south because some of you might not know, but other cities didn't have any running water. So not only were you out of power, you didn't have, and supplies, you didn't have actually running water for some of those actual municipalities. So outstanding job by our team, but one, keeping us running, but two, Mark Bogan and Chip LaMarca for coming through for us on that. State Representative Patricia Williams and Senator Gary Farmer, really outstanding jobs as well to come out, help volunteer and give things out. There were a lot of community members that came out. Katie Freitag, who's in the audience tonight, came out to Quiet Waters Park to give out water and food. Tyrone Philpart came out there. Linda Hunter, our former city employee, came out there and picked up water and ice and brought it to the areas that needed it. That was one of the biggest challenges that I saw, is that people were poorly equipped for this storm, and we didn't even get the brunt of it. So if we're looking at a Cat 5 and you don't have enough water for Tuesday morning, you've got an issue. And quite frankly, water was constantly running, so that wasn't really your problem. But when if people weren't expecting to be out of power for more than 2 days, we have to reevaluate and rethink how we approach these storms, and we really think about that. And that goes for a lot of the private facilities and even some of the facilities in which have governing bodies over them and how they prepared themselves for these storms. There shouldn't be a case where you have someone bringing lighting from their homes to light up stairwells in these facilities when you have no elevators, you have handicapped, elderly population that are trapped up there without any water, or excuse me, without any air conditioning, and cannot even get out of the floor that they are on. And if they try to take a trek down the stairs, there's no lights at night. That's not well prepared for this type of event, and I hope everyone learns that lesson and takes that with them. Really incredible people who reached out. It was a pleasure to work with them. Thank you for the kind comments, both of you. It was an interesting series of events that happened this past week, but a lot of citizens stepped forward and helped each other, and I'm eternally grateful for that. I believe that is it. The only other comment I will say is that I would like to see our parking ordinance for Hillsborough be put on the next agenda. And I have an idea also for background checks for the city of Deerfield Beach that I'll save for the next commission meeting to discuss and go over with everyone. So with that, a motion to adjourn the meeting? Motion second. Meeting adjourned.
They didn't even see one.